morning, everybody. Just wait for my slides to come up, but while I'm waiting, I'd love to ask a few questions. The first question is, how's your English? Is your English okay? It's good or not so good? We've got some thumbs up. Good. The second question is, we have translation. Okay, great. The next question is, how many of you are technical experts or engineers of any kind? If you're a technical expert or an engineer, can you put your hands up? Brilliant, brilliant. How many of you are CEOs or business owners? Can you put your hand up if you're an entrepreneur? Brilliant, we've got a few, yeah. I've got another question. How many of you would like to start your own business one day? Yeah, we've got a lot. How many of you don't have an idea, but you're thinking, oh, I just wish I had an idea, and then I'd start a business? Any of you? Yeah, a few? Okay, great, great, great. I think this is going to be for you, this presentation. So just to tell you a little bit about myself, my name's Himowicz. I'm an innovation coach, and I work with CEOs of $100 million revenue companies, and I work with CEOs and founders of early-stage startups. I help them create new scalable business models, and I also help them create value propositions that their customers love. Okay? And I want to talk about this post here. So I wrote this on LinkedIn about a month ago. I've only got around 10,000 followers on LinkedIn, but this managed to get 300,000 impressions. And I'm going to talk about the post in a second. Friends of mine, yeah, I've seen them steal this post, not credit me, and then I told them, and they go, I didn't realize it was yours. So I've seen that many people use this post since I made it. And it's about innovation. And I really want to share with you, I want to share it with you today because I think it's going to help us answer this question of how do you turn a new technology into a successful business? How do we innovate? Okay? So let's have a look at it. This is what people think innovation is, okay? You see, building new products and technology, okay? That's what people associate it with. But actually, what innovation is more like this. We need to zoom out. It's about learning about our customers, understanding what their needs are, testing ideas and collecting evidence, and then being prepared to kill our ideas at an early stage so we don't waste time, energy, money building something that nobody wants. Because that's what happens so often, right? We say we're going to build a prototype. We're going to build an MVP, minimum viable product. It's only going to take 3 months. What happens after 6 months? Is it ready? No, but we just need 10,000 more euros and 3 more months, and then it will be ready. But this is not the right approach. What we should be doing is trying to test our ideas very quickly in a few weeks, and then make sure that we don't invest too much money until we've got evidence that it's a good idea. And this is what we're going to talk about in this session today. Oh, and so building new products and technology is just one small part of it. Let's understand this process a bit better. So all of the methodology that I use comes from these books. It's the Strategizer book series. Business Model Generation, this is one of the classics. It's in the top 10 business books of all time on many lists. As part of it, it talks about the business model canvas. Millions of people around the world use this methodology to create new businesses. It was invented by these two, Yves Pignot and Alex Osterwalder. I've been lucky enough to work closely with Alex over the past 3 years. As I say, he's the inventor of the business model canvas. So we'll be using 1 or 2 of these tools for this session. Okay, so what innovation really is. We said it's about learning about customers. What does that mean? Well, we need to use one of the tools that I mentioned here, which is the customer profile. Okay, this helps us really understand customers. Okay, I want to tell a quick story about this. So back in 2015, I was in London, and I went to a workshop with Alex Osterwalder, and he introduced me to this concept. After the workshop, I was working at a digital agency, and the CEO of that company was a very successful entrepreneur. He had 2 successful exits. He was a multi-millionaire. And I sat down and I asked him like 4 questions, right? Number 1, who's our customer? Yeah. Number 2, what are their jobs to be done? What are they trying to do? Number 3, What are their pains and their difficulties and their frustrations? And number 4, what are their gains? What are the outcomes that they want? What are the results, their desired results? Basic questions. We spent 45 minutes discussing, and we didn't really get the answers. But afterwards he said, Nick, that was a fantastic conversation, you know? Because then we started changing our approach to how we ran the organization. I helped them. We were able to generate millions in revenue after that conversation. So it was very, very, very successful starting point. So I want to ask you a few questions, or get you to think about a few questions now. I want you to think about this. Who would you like to sell to? What are they trying to get done in their work and in their life? What are their goals and their desired outcomes? And what difficulties, frustrations, obstacles, negative outcomes are they experiencing? This is the foundation of what we need to do to be able to create a successful business. If you don't have the answers to this, you won't have a successful business. Because I speak to a lot of CEOs and they say, I want us to be, we're a customer-centric organization. Everything's about the customer here. And then I say, okay, great. Who are your customers? What are their jobs to be done? What are their pains and their gains? And then they scratch their head. Maybe they're a CEO that's done a lot of sales before and they've spoken to a lot of customers. So maybe the CEO does have the answers. But often what I find, is that when I say, okay, does anybody outside of your sales team and your customer success team know the answers to these questions? The answers usually no. So what we should do is these answers should be in a document somewhere that's shared with everybody in the company so that we can create a truly customer-centric company. Because if everybody in your company doesn't know the answer to these questions, you're not a customer-centric company. Okay? So that's the tool. Now, I want to give a Moldovan example. I made a video about this on YouTube. Sona from Simples, they are doing amazing things. The process that they use within Simples is world-class. It's world-class. And they're using a lot of elements from those books that I talked about before. So I want to give you a bit of an example here. So Dmitry Voloshin, he's a competitive swimmer, right? He does his running and his swimming. You're all familiar with him, I believe. Yeah, I see some nods. I see some also no movement, so I'll explain. He's the founder of Simples, right? And he also runs a lot of the marathons and things that go on in Chisinau. Okay, so he was preparing for one of these races one day, and in that point, what he was trying to do was improve his swimming technique with his coach. The difficulty that he had was that he said, I can't hear my coach when I'm underwater. Yeah? I can see Vyacheslav nodding. He likes this story. So he says, I can't hear my coach while I'm underwater. Yeah, because you can't hear. And so the coach is shouting, but Dmitry couldn't hear. And so what he wanted, the game that he wanted, was real-time feedback. In the moment, when he's moving his arm, he wanted to be able to hear exactly what he's doing wrong. Not like this, should be like this. Not like that, should be like that. And what he wanted to get was a new personal best record to reach faster strokes, do fewer strokes to finish the length. That was his customer profile. So he went to his team and he said, look, we're creating this for people like me, okay? And we need to create a solution. So his team created a solution for him. And it looked something like this. And then what they did was it worked. It's actually working. You can buy this. It's a great solution. The coach is able to speak directly to the swimmer and they can make in real time changes to their technique, okay? Now, as you saw, that was the customer profile. There was a second part to this though. It's not just enough to understand the customer. We need to go out and run tests. So we need to collect evidence that it really works. Now, a lot of people think that the startup journey is like this, you know, straight line. But actually, in reality, the startup journey looks more like this, okay? It's a very messy process. And what we need to be doing is running experiments throughout, okay? Now, in one of the books, Testing Business Ideas, that I shared with you before, there's a library of 44 business experiments that we can run. Some of them are more expensive than others. Some of them are cheaper. What we should be doing in the early stages is running cheaper experiments, and then later on we do more expensive experiments. You know Tesla, yeah? Great cars. I've driven one before. It's amazing, yeah? How did they sell it in the beginning? Or how did they test the idea in the beginning? What they did was they took a Lotus, right? And they got customer feedback on the Lotus. They also got customer feedback on other competitor products at the time. They got a lot of information then. Then what they did was they did another test later on where they did a pre-sale, number 38. What they said is we're going to pre-sell the original Roadsters, and they called it the 100 Club. They sold 100 Roadsters to 100 people, but people prepaid. Okay, they paid $100,000 each before the cars were even ready. They weren't even ready, and they paid $100,000. It took nearly 2 years for them to get their cars. But the fact that they did the pre-sale meant that they had the money to develop the product. And that was strong evidence. Very strong evidence because they had the money in the bank. Okay? So what we should be doing is trying to pre-sell. That's just one experiment. But we should be trying to pre-sell our ideas early on. So we've got the money in the pocket first, and then we can start building. What do we normally do? We build straight away. We spend years and years building something, and then we go, does anybody want it? And everyone says, no. That's not the approach. We should do a similar approach to Tesla, and it's not expensive. Okay, this is another point just to really make the point clear. So you've got a new idea, you want to get to a successful business. The route is through business experiments, and what we're trying to do over time is reduce risk and uncertainty, okay? And then only slowly increase investment when we've reduced risk and uncertainty. And how do we reduce risk? Through doing the business experiments. Okay, so I want to go to the business model from Sona here. So they had the technology, and the value proposition was a real-time swim coach headset. They were selling to swimmers, and the basic set was $249 transactional revenue. And they sold it through their partners, mainly, although you could buy it on the website as well. Now, what you need to do is an assumptions map like this. Each of the blocks in your business model in the beginning is just a guess. You don't know if it's true. You don't know if it's going to work. So what you need to do is take that information, identify what assumptions are we making? What guesses are we making that we don't have any evidence for? Then map it on here. Is this guess important or less important? Do we have evidence about this guess or no evidence? What's really important then is that we say we're going to focus in this top right-hand quadrant. So something like this would have been what Dimitri and his team saw or identified as a big challenge or a big assumption, that swimmers like hearing their coaches while they're swimming underwater. And then what we would do is use something like this called the test card. So first of all, we say our hypothesis is a testable assumption, right? Swimmers like hearing coaches underwater. The test, 20 customer interviews we're going to do. Metric, number of people that like hearing their coaches underwater. And then the criteria, 50% of people want to hear their coaches while they swim or their instructions while they swim underwater. Okay, this is where we then use the learn card after we've done the experiment. What did they learn? Swimmers don't like hearing the coaches underwater all the time. It's a headache. That's what they said. So we need to pivot to a different customer segment. Okay? So we said the third point here is killing ideas at an early stage. I picked the most strong option, but there are other options here. One option is that we pivot. This is where we make significant changes to one or more building blocks on our business model. Persevere is where we just continue to the next experiment because we're like, it's going well, let's move to the next experiment. Killing the idea is this isn't going to work. We need to kill this early and move on to the next idea, okay? And this is not a bad thing. Most startups and businesses fail, especially the early stage ones, right? But the entrepreneurs that have been through multiple businesses are more likely to be successful because you learn more from what not to do. So it's not bad for us to try and do lots of different businesses. What's worse is when we say, we've got one business idea and we're going to spend 10 years on it. Well, it just might be the wrong idea. What we need to do is move through ideas and not be afraid to kill them. We need to be not afraid to pivot, and we persevere when it's the right time. Okay, so they pivoted to a different customer segment. This time they said, we're not going to focus on selling to the swimmers. Let's focus on trying to sell to the coaches. Let's understand them. So what they realized from customer interviews was that coaches, the pain that they have is they're shouting all day. Like, you know, if you go to the swimming pool while someone's getting a swimming lesson, rah, they're talking, they're shouting. Their voice at the end of the day is strained, okay? And they have to wait to give feedback as well. They have to wait until the person's got to the end of there. They've forgotten, the swimmer's forgotten. It's not a good way of giving feedback. So they added the swimmer as a customer segment. Now, there was a challenge here, though, because they realized in the business model, if I go back a second, that even though this was successful and it's still a business that they're continuing with, they are persevering with it, they realized that there aren't enough coaches in the world for like Olympic athletes to use this. So it can still be a good business, but they want it to be $1 billion business. And it's not going to be that because the market's just not big enough. So they said, we'll continue with it, but it's not achieving our goals as a business. So they said, we'll persevere with it, but we're also simultaneously going to pivot. Okay? So they pivoted to more general long, like swimmers that like do long distance swimming. They found that a lot of them lacked motivation. They found sessions long and boring. So they created a new value proposition with the same technology. They said, we're going to create a 100% waterproof music player. It's going to be a bit cheaper, and they're still going to sell it through distributors. They also sell it through Amazon and through their website as well. This now has the potential to be a much bigger business in terms of revenue. The challenge is they have more competitors, but they're optimistic about this one. So hopefully you can see through this process that they were able to pivot, persevere, test their ideas. What my hope is for Moldova is that all the businesses are going to be working like this. If we can teach businesses to think like this, it's going to change, like Moldova is going to be an entrepreneurship hub for the whole of Europe. But it's a process because the problem is, what do we think innovation is? Building products and technology. What is it in reality? Understanding customers, testing our ideas, not being afraid to kill them if they don't work. So, what I encourage you all to do is right now, if you're working in an existing business, this works as well. Ask yourself, who are we trying to serve? What are their problems they're trying to solve, the jobs they want to work on, the pains that they're struggling with, and the gains? One thing I would add here, because I really want to show you how important this is. One of my clients is the top 5 biggest companies in Europe. Top 5 biggest companies in Europe is one of my clients. Now, how did I get them as a client? I'm an individual, independent coach. How did I get them? Because I hear some people saying, oh, we're small, we're from Moldova, a lot of big companies don't want to work with us. One thing I did to be able to get a major client as my customer is first of all, I sent 300 messages on LinkedIn, to people it's a pharmaceutical company. In pharmaceutical companies, I was aiming for innovation managers and directors of innovation and chief innovation officers. Those are the people that I was aiming for, okay? And what I did was I went on LinkedIn and I created a list of like 300, 400 of them, And then what I did was I sent, using LinkedIn Premium, I sent messages to them saying, I'm creating a new product, a new service, and I think it's really going to help people like you, I just want to jump on a call with you, and I want to ask a few questions so we can create something that's really going to solve your problems. 3 people out of 300 came back and said, yeah, okay, let's jump on a call. One of them was an innovation director at one of the top companies, and all I did was jump on a call, show them this visual, and then as they were talking, I asked them, what are you trying to accomplish? What are your frustrations and your difficulties? But what's your desired outcome? And we mapped it out together. I wrote it down as they were talking on Zoom. And so the person, they could see what I was writing down, and they could actually go, oh, hold on, it's not quite right. It's like this. And they go, okay, great. And then I adapt it. So I had a customer profile for the customer I was trying to work with. And I wasn't trying to sell them anything. I was just really trying to help them understand their needs. When you speak to a customer and you ask them really like important questions like this, and you listen to them, and then they just talk to you and talk about their problems, they enjoy that. It's like therapy for them. And you've got all the really important information that you need to be able to sell them a solution. At the end of the call, I didn't try to sell though. I just thanked them for their time. I said, look, as we develop it, would you mind if I can share with you what we develop in the future? He said, no problem. 3 months later though, he came back to me before I got back to him, and he said, Nick, actually, we'd like to do some work with you. Can you come in and let's have a conversation about that? And now I've started working with them, okay? So you can build really deep relationships with people when you understand their jobs, pains, and their gains. And I would recommend to all of you that you adopt this approach. Because the problem is, many of you said that you were technology experts and engineers. But to be successful, we actually need to become experts in our customers. Right? We need to ask these questions and become experts. Okay, so these are the questions that I encourage you to ask. Please go ahead and ask them. As I said, I've been Nick Himowicz. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. You can scan that code there. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.